Tesla closed at an all-time high today, Bradford, just under $490. It's been up only since the market started to realize that Tesla actually has indeed solved autonomy. But we got a lot of other stuff to get into. I think first, let's just savor this moment for a bit. It's been a lot of years of sideways as Tesla investors, but here we are at a fresh new all-time high. How are you feeling?
Marching higher. Feels like people are starting to get it. There's a lot of excitement. Uh, is it real? That's what I'm wondering. Like, as a longtime Tesla holder, like, are we going to hang on to this, or is this going to be surrendered in early January? I got a lot of trauma from like January and February's in the past, so um, not counting on it staying like this, but curious to see where it goes. I do think people are a little optimistic about deliveries for this quarter, and I'm curious how uh, people take it when if deliveries come in light. But
Hmm.
there's a lot that's going well, and version 14 is for real. A lot more people are seeing it. I'm wondering if a lot of people buying the stock are Europeans, who are getting to experience it for the first time.
Yeah, I think that could be a bit of it. I would guess just based on how big of a move this is, and given Tesla's market cap already over, I guess now it's what, probably 1.6 trillion. Um, it has to be institutional buying, I think, to move the stock, this much at these levels. So, that's my suspicion, is that it's probably more the institutions are getting it. We saw a note from Adam Jonas today. His notes just crack me up. Like,
Do they think if they buy Tesla stock, then they'll be able to buy the IPO,
oh,
the
that's a good
IPO?
angle. I hadn't really thought about that. Um, that could be, I don't know. But even the Adam Jonas note this morning was kind of hilarious, because he talked about how the robotaxi network is gonna expand drastically in 2026. Do you know what number he came up with in terms of the number of robotaxis in the field at the end of 2026?
Was it 10,000?
1,000. So
Really?
he's like 1,000. This is like classic Adam Jonas in
Ugh,
my mind. Like
yes.
like this like the right conclusion for the wrong reasons, and then like some hyper bullish thing on the other end. So then he says by 2030 they'll get to 1 million robo taxis. So it's just it's like it's hard to really get frustrated with his take, because it's better than I think most of the Wall Street analysts, but still it's like kind of stupid in the particulars of what he's assuming.
Yeah, I remember in 2019, Adam Jonas said that the most cars they would sell in China from a gigafactory Shanghai was going to be 71,000 per year, and now they do that in over a month.
Yeah.
So they do 12x the number, and more so than that in China.
Yeah, well, in fairness, that was just Shanghai was just a field of dirt at that time. So yeah, there's been a whole history of some pretty wild predictions gone wrong there. I want to maybe hijack our agenda that we had planned for a minute. You asked me a question the other day, which I think we're going to do a separate video on. But the question was, okay, what would it take in terms of robotaxi deployments to double Tesla's earnings per share? And so just to kind of set this up in terms of what I actually did, I'm just looking at Q3 of this year, the last quarter that we have results for. Tesla did 50 cents in adjusted earnings per share.
Mhm.
And so let's assume it's a completely Tesla owned fleet. You pricing at $2.50 per mile, which is maybe on the high side. We can run some sensitivities on that. But some kind of reasonable assumptions around deadhead miles, but basically running flat out.
And those are the miles that you don't get to charge a customer for.
Yep, exactly. So, and then the cost of goods sold, I think, is also pretty high. I had it in at like 70 cents per mile. But
Mhm.
that's kind of accounting for some of those deadhead miles. But that way you got like the depreciation costs built in there for the vehicle, everything. So, given that, what do you think it would take in terms of how many robo taxis deployed, and nothing else changing, no other, increase in gigawatt hours deployed on the energy side or anything like that. What do you think it would take to double Tesla's earnings per share to $1 in a quarter?
So I think we're talking about 1.6 billion before tax. Um, so um, so or after tax. So then before tax, you need
Well,
maybe 2.4 billion. So I'm gonna
well,
say
so last quarter they were at 1.9 pre-tax.
okay,
So you need to get just shy of 4 pre-tax.
okay. I'm gonna say it's gonna be less than 50,000 robo taxis at that price.
Okay, so the number I came up with was 132,000. Um, so more than you were thinking, but still, like that that is not a lot of robo taxis. And then to double it again from there, so to basically get to $2 in quarterly earnings, you only need 393,000 vehicles. So when you talk about getting to Adam Jonas's level of a million plus, potentially even many millions, the earnings numbers start to get a little nutty. And so this is why I think we can be at this moment that we are right now in the stock where, like, I'm still seeing some people say, oh, Tesla looks very expensive. You look at the PE ratio and it admittedly is extremely high right now, but we're right at the beginning of this, kickoff of this highly profitable new part of their business that is going to be a TAM expanding, massive new market. And so I think that's why we're seeing the market or the stock start to react the way that it is. So we'll do a video kind of deep diving those assumptions here in the not too distant future. But I wanted to kind of share those thoughts just to tee up why I think the stock is moving. But if that is true, maybe the market doesn't care about production and deliveries too much, because you start saying, well, really, whether you're at 410 or 450, that really has no bearing on the actual earnings of the company. What really moves the company is how quickly do you expand robotaxi network.
Waymo keeps having new announcements for new cities, but I'm guessing they're going to cap out at 2,500 vehicles for now. I was wondering this morning, who's the first of 5,000? So Tesla, they're working off a small base. They're at maybe 150 now, but they might be the first of 5,000. I'm curious to see. I think it's not a foregone conclusion that Waymo is the first of 5,000. Um,
It, you
what
know,
do you?
it's just kind of funny because, like, I don't know. It seems like we are in the first tenth of a mile of a marathon race, and everyone's like, "Oh, Waymo's leading. Like, who's going to get to the 2 mile marker first?" It's like it doesn't matter. Like they don't have a business model that makes it to the end of the marathon. Like
Mhm.
their unit economics don't scale. And this is something I don't think people really understand outside the Tesla community anyways, just like, adding more radar, having a very high upfront cost and, being less efficient on the watt hours per mile. Like those are all losing factors for Waymo. I think the only chance they really had is if Tesla's vision only approach didn't work. If you actually need LiDAR and, the sophisticated sensor fusion approach, but Tesla is essentially proven. Like I think we can say that Tesla has proven you can do vision only, and it will work in essentially every scenario. Um, so yeah, I think it's just plain to see that Tesla's approach has won, and therefore Waymo's business model is like, okay, great, you had a great sprint off the start line in the marathon, but you don't have the gas to take it all the way through to the end.
Well, I wouldn't account. I wouldn't count on Waymo not changing their approach.
That's a fair point.
So I think they may, even though they keep pushing, oh, we're safer than Tesla and we got LiDAR and all this stuff. I think they may be looking at a vision only approach. So and going more end to end. So I'm not sure if they're yet using end to end AI approach or if it's still rules based. Um, it is very smooth to ride in Waymo. So like if it's rules based, I'm very impressed
Yeah,
with how smooth it is.
I don't think it is rules based, but I guess I'm not certain about that. But I mean,
Mm.
so even if they do change their approach, and let's say they get rid of lidar and radar and all the other sensors that they have, then they're only left with the problem of not being able to not having a capital cost that's nearly as attractive as Tesla. So like what, maybe they can acquire these for 40,000, 50,000, like in a super optimistic scenario, whereas Tesla can manufacture the Cybercab, let's say for 30,000. I think that's conservative. I think that realistically it'll be lower than that.
Yeah,
So then it's
Cybercab should be 20,
I
closer to
agree.
20.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's say Cybercab's at 20 and Waymo's at 40, which uh, I mean, how do you just make up for that? Like I don't think you can. I mean, I guess there has to be a second place
Yeah.
player, so maybe that's the prize they're rooting for. But to me, it
It's
just
a
seems like
yeah.
Tesla from the very beginning. Elon was talking about this, way back in, you know 2016, 17, where he's saying like we're gonna go for the gold maximum, which is the universal approach, using vision only. And if you can actually solve for that, then you've achieved the lowest cost possible. And I think that is going to be their moat, essentially, is that nobody, like, who else could possibly come in. I guess one of the Chinese would be the only player that could,
Yeah.
to do some like low cost manufacturing, plus a highly capable universal driver, essentially.
Mhm. Well, Ford can make the Mach-E for them. Yeah, they're giving
The
up on the
Mache.
Ford. They're giving up on the F-150, doing that all electric, but they're not necessarily giving up on the Mach-E.
Yeah, so that was some sad news. Um, I actually did feel pretty sad about this. So, Ford is taking
Yeah.
this $19.5 billion impairment charge, essentially, on their EV investments. They're halting production of the F-150. They're looking to reroute some of their battery supply to stationary storage applications. Just rolling back the clock a few years, I think you and I both would have said Ford was one of the few companies, one of the few traditional OEMs that was doing it the right way. They split out their EV business from the rest of their traditional auto business. They were making these investments. Their products were like actually pretty decent. And so just to see them, kind of like compromise and roll back, and just, to me, it just feels like they said, yeah, this is actually a little harder than we thought. And, I guess in fairness, the MBA in me would point out that, the demand wasn't really there, at least in the last couple of years. But to me, it definitely feels like they're giving up too early. But what are your thoughts on this? Were you as saddened by this as I am, or maybe not being a Michigander, you're not as emotionally tied to it as I am?
I don't know if it's true they're giving up completely. So I know they're writing off the F-150. I don't think they're stopping the Mach-E, are they?
No,
Um,
I think the Mach-E is still going to be out there, but I don't think that was ever selling, particularly well.
they're giving up some of their expansion plans. So they're saying they're, at least one of the battery factories they had planned, they're going to use for stationary storage. So I guess they'll have some tough packs out there for stationary storage, or whatever they
Yeah,
want to
built Ford
call.
tough stationary storage. I don't know. Does anyone actually think Fords are built that tough? I don't know. The Cybertruck looks a little tougher to me.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So I don't think Doug Field is at Ford. I don't think they've scrapped that project just yet. So I wouldn't count Ford out completely. That's just what's going through my mind. But I was sad to see like how big the write down was.
Yeah. This, I'm loath to quote Farzad here, but I think this is a great comment. Actually, it's very hard to win in EVs if you hate pain. I think that's just so true. I mean, Tesla investors who've been with this, over the last 6, 7, 8 years, even longer. There's been so much pain that Tesla went through, ramping the Model S, then going through the Model X, design challenges that they had. And then the real pain was the Model 3 ramp, trying to get to like a true mass market vehicle. And that was just, what did Elon say? It's like chewing glass and staring into the abyss. Like you have to do that, if you want to have success in this space. So I think that's just a very good way of putting it. And if you start feeling a little pain and you just say, you know what, we're just going to go back to the old way of doing things. I don't think the old way of doing things is going to work in this new age that we're entering.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the robotaxi in Austin. They're beginning to test with no safety monitor.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason that the stock is moving. So, I've seen some kind of mixed reactions on this, and I know you may have a bit of a contrarian take here.
Yeah.
So maybe you can kind of tee up what we actually know, about this, and maybe why you maybe actually I won't
Yeah.
put words in your mouth.
Let me
Mouth.
tee
Why
it
don't
up.
you?
So, yeah, there's about 29 or so Model Ys that are known to be operating in Austin for the robotaxi network there. And as far as we know, there are two that we've seen so far without any safety monitor in them that Tesla's been running. They don't have the robotaxi painted on the side. I don't think they have any passenger at all. Um, so like it's it is good to see that Tesla is taking that step, and I think there's steps we don't quite know are happening. So I think there's something with software that I kind of took for granted. So like when you're in the robo taxi, there's a software on the screen in front of you, and you can control your music and some other things. You can hit start ride, and you can stop the ride anytime. You can reroute the ride from your phone. But then on the screen, like there's this kind of like this service level screen, like where you take your car into service. There's a special screen that comes up. So
Mhm.
it's like a special screen. It doesn't have the red border, but it's a screen that we don't have as Tesla owners. So I think there's like a special software that needs to go on that screen. It needs to be ready. um, Tesla wants to test them on their own without passengers,
Mhm.
but it worries me a little bit, and the reason being, because we're seeing it in so few cars. I was hoping they would just. I was thinking in my mind before this happened that they would just flip a switch, and then suddenly those 29 cars would not have safety monitors, and people would just be riding in them.
Yeah.
And what worries me is they had that first autonomous delivery,
Mm.
I don't know, 6 months ago, and they haven't had one since.
So maybe a bit of a George Bush mission accomplished kind of moment here, where we're celebrating the victories a little too soon. So yeah, I think that's a fair point, especially on the autonomous delivery side. I mean, we've seen no efforts to scale that up whatsoever. So it does feel a little kind of like a one shot PR kind of gimmick. Now, I think in the long term they will do that, but
Mhm.
at least where we stand right now, it doesn't seem like that's some like major new initiative that they're continuing to make ground on. But maybe where I'd push back a little is, Elon said about a week ago, I think he said that in 3 weeks, they're going to remove the safety monitors. So to me, it seems like it'd be a logical step to say, hey, let's do one or two vehicles, make sure everything's fine before we remove all the safety monitors. But I mean, if we're 2 weeks from now at the end of the year and the safety monitors come out, essentially right on Elon's timeline, um, to me, I think that would give you the data that you need to call this a win, and something that can then scale up from a couple dozen cars to a couple hundred, and eventually you can kind of alleviate this wait time issue that you have in for the robo taxi network in Austin.
Okay. I have an interesting question, and I
All
think
right.
people could read it the wrong way, so I'll try to read it the right way. So we know Tesla has a control center at Giga Texas where they're watching these vehicles. They have a setup where they can drive the vehicles with the huge wide screen, and have a steering wheel and pedals, and you can sit in your racing simulator. So the question is how many remote operators are in these totally empty cars? How many are watching? And I think this is a really good question. And I know Vigo's a bull, so I know, and there's a language difference too. Um, so I think they need to get that remote operation team ready. So I don't know what the plan will be initially, but maybe this is kind of crazy. maybe all the safety monitors at first are gonna one for one watch each vehicle and like be
Mm,
ready to do something if something happens with one of the vehicles. Maybe they also are doing training,
mhm,
so maybe they just have uh, these two vehicles that don't have anybody in them, but maybe the dozens are watching each car right now, and they're all training and thinking about how they would handle different situations.
mhm.
Um, so I think my fears are a little overblown. I'm a little like I was hoping that the whole delivery thing was going to start like crazy once they did it the
Yeah.
first one. So my heart was a little broken from that.
Yeah, I can understand that, but, in my mind, that was never like a super valuable economic thing. I mean, it would only really be that economical in areas right outside Fremont and Giga, Texas. Worth doing for sure, but I mean, if you figure it's like maybe 10,000 vehicles and you're saving a couple $100 per vehicle, it's just not super meaningful to the company's financials. Um, where but I want to come back to your point about those remote monitors. I do think that the way Tesla is most likely to approach this would be to do something similar to what you said. So okay, you you want to maximize safety, because the worst thing still at this point, even though we're kind of patting ourselves on the back and saying Tesla's essentially solved autonomy, you could still have a pretty bad accident, an injury, a death, that would just like set this back instantly by 12 months or something like that. So you still absolutely want to prioritize safety over kind of rapid expansion. um, so if you take those monitors out and essentially have them remote monitoring, as you're saying, I do think that that would be like a very reasonable first step. But I think like then you could start going down the chain of, okay, right now you start with a 1-to-1, and then you say,
Mhm.
okay, we actually don't need you except for I don't know, 5% of the time, whatever the actual number is. And so then you can start going like 1-to-2 and 1-to-4 and 1-to-10. So I think
Mhm.
eventually you can just start to see you can be overly cautious, because you're not actually going to need 1-to-1 off the bat, but it's just kind of belt and suspenders. But then you can also kind of work on the internal software that Tesla is going to need to say, okay, how do we trigger this person, this remote monitor to say, hey, you need to we're going to like flash you to this particular vehicle right here that needs some attention. Help them to get oriented on what the situation is, and then how to get them out of it. Like
Yeah.
kind of managing those workflows are presumably going to be take some amount of effort. And so I would imagine that Tesla is going to kind of work on prioritizing that kind of internal workflow and software, so that you can help those remote monitors to eventually make handle a fleet of 20 or 50 or something like that. And eventually I think you'll get to the point where maybe you have like one per every 100 or 1,000, or maybe even less than that in the very long run. But you want to like baby step into that kind of future.
Mhm. Yeah, it makes sense that eventually you're not one for one, watching the same car, and then you need some kind of workflow to take over or to help the car. And I think they're not going to be driving the cars in general. Like
Yeah.
when they're remote driving them, they can't necessarily go quick. It's kind of awkward because there's latency,
Hmm.
but mainly they need to like get the car pointed in the right direction and then give it a new command to get it restarted
Hmm.
essentially. So you don't necessarily need to drive it from point A to B. You just need to get it uh, turned around and get its bearings, and then you can move on to the next car once it's going.
Yep, I think that's right. But I do think it just takes some time for Tesla to kind of work out all those processes, and at the same time they've got to start expanding to other cities, and they've got to start figuring out how to do airport drop off and pick up, and a lot of these kind of localized issues that will need to be mapped in some particular way. So yeah, I think Tesla's got a lot to do, and I think we should, as bulls and investors, I don't think we should be overly kind of impatient as they kind of work through the kinks of this. um, I do think it's true though that this is going to be a non-linear scaling. So it's felt very slow so far to go from like 12 to 24, and then maybe we'll double again. So anything sub 100, sub 1,000 is like rounding error. We need to get to 10,000 before I think it even has like a slight impact. And so, but the goal isn't 10,000. Like the goal is, when do we get to 100,000? When do we get to hundreds of thousands? So I
Mhm.
think having the system in place that can scale to that, that's the most important thing. So I would encourage patience for everyone over the next 6 months or so, as Tesla kind of works on these issues in the background. And then they'll also have to expand to other cities too, which I want to hit on in a second too.
Yeah, there's no limit right now in Texas for one. So like, whenever they're comfortable and they're figuring out handoff, drop off, etc. Um, they do need to figure out airports. So I think they already do. They already have approval for San Jose, or is that Waymo?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
Okay. Um, but I think they could do like 50,000 in Texas alone if they wanted to.
Hmm.
And they're allowed to operate wherever they want in the state. There just needs to be coordination with local services in case something goes wrong with like an accident or something.
Yeah, and so I did have a conversation, a secondhand conversation, but it was somebody, one of the remote operators, and they were basically, I kind of asked the question like, oh, like why would you, be hired as a remote operator right now, given the fact that those jobs are presumably going away, and the thesis here, and this is secondhand, and this person might not have the actual information about the rollout plan, so take it with a grain of salt. But the way that the expectation was for this to work was, okay, well, maybe Austin is done, but maybe you go work in San Jose, or maybe you go work in Dallas, and maybe you do keep actual physical safety operators in the cars there, and then just follow the same kind of set of logic where
Yeah.
you get comfortable with the fact that how it's operating locally, because there are going to be different road signs, or different situations in the region. So you keep some human operators in there, and then eventually you kind of shift to remote operation, and then those remote operators will then pack up and go to the next city, and kind of so on and so forth. So you kind of like opening up franchises regionally. To me, that made a lot of sense as to what Tesla's plan would be. And I think we should be expecting a lot more cities to go to go just in general. But then also, I think they will all go faster than Austin went, both because they've got their learnings from Austin, but also because the newer models are just going to be so much more capable than what was launched in Austin. So I think this is the rate of acceleration is going to accelerate.
Yeah, I was asking one of the remote operators like what they would do if they were done in Austin. Like would they go work down in San Antonio, because San Antonio is the closest of the three cities to Austin,
Hmm.
and he didn't seem that thrilled by it. But I do think there would be a percentage of remote operators that would be into it either for the mission or because they're young whippersnappers and willing to be a little crazy and a little more transient, while they're young and fresh out of college, that kind of thing.
I could see you doing that. I think you would just love the technology side of it and being on the forefront of deployment.
Yeah, I need to stay married though, so I
That
I,
is important.
I don't
Yeah.
think I can do that.
Probably not at this point, but to your point, yeah, in an earlier stage of life, that could be attractive.
So I think we did talk a bit about like why deliveries matter less. So Matt shared about how 130 robo taxis, if they were operating at 200 $2.50 a mile, which is would be competitive with Uber and Lyft generally, from what we've seen from their pricing. Uh,
130,000, just to be clear. Just
130,000. Yeah,
yeah.
thank you. So that would mean that those Teslas were making how much per year would it be? Um,
It's a quarterly snapshot the way that I did it. So,
would it be like 6 billion and or like 8 billion in annual profits before tax?
well, just on that side of the business, or the overall
Yeah,
thing.
just on that side. So
So
let's
it'd be over 6 billion of annual profit.
okay. So we're talking about 130,000 cars. So right now Tesla does around 2 million cars. So we're talking about if only 130,000 were serving in a robotaxi function, they would equal the profits of Tesla today.
Hmm.
That's how
And
profitable these could be for Tesla.
yeah, and the other thing is, like, as the FSD gets better, you're gonna sell more FSD subscriptions. You're gonna sell more FSD outright purchases. Um, I think the take rate has been egregiously low for a long time now. We're seeing in real time now the public awareness starting to shift for the first time ever, like around this, and
Mm.
I think it's actually becoming an attractive selling option. So I think not only will you see FSD sales go up too, which is only going to increase the profitability, but I also think like you might actually start selling Teslas just because you can buy FSD with them, and you can't buy that in any other car. So, my sense of what's going to happen in the future is that you'll have, the energy business expanding. You'll have the, oh, why are we showing this? You'll have the,
Just for fun.
all right. But you'll have FSD subscriptions starting to tick up pretty high. You'll have a significantly higher take rate for FSD purchases as well. And then on top of that, higher vehicle sales. And then you'll start getting to hundreds of thousands of vehicles. So like all these things I think are going to be happening at the same time. And like for the most part, only going up. I don't want to say up only because it sounds like a little too much. We are going to have cycles still, I think, but
Mhm.
the overall trend, I think, is going to be up for all of those those key metrics. And so I think when you start looking at what happens when Tesla's selling, let's just say 4 million vehicles a year, and there's a 40% FSD take rate, and then they've got a million robo taxis on the road. Granted, ASPs will be lower, for the dollars per mile. But still the margins I think will be phenomenal. And I think the earnings power then gets to like the crazy levels where Elon is starting to earn some of these tranches on his 2025 CEO Performance Award. So that's where I think you bridge this valuation right now, which looks pretty high relative to their historical financials. I don't think it takes much at all for these trends to start accelerating, and then for Tesla to suddenly start looking pretty cheap on a PE or EV to EBITDA kind of basis.
Yeah. And that's why I asked Matt to look at, okay, what would it take for Tesla's profits to double from here and then double again? Because like a 200 PE sounds high, but like when we look at growth stocks, we don't look at the earnings a company did last year. We're looking forward the next year, and then typically like we like to look out 3 to 5 years. But so like if you double the earnings and that PE goes from 200 to 100, then if you
Hmm.
double earnings again, then it goes from 100 to 50. And then it doesn't sound so crazy.
Well, especially if you've been having 100% earnings per share growth recently, like, then
Yeah.
a 50 might actually be slightly on the low side, depending on how long the market kind of thinks that growth rate can be sustained. Um, yeah, and this is even like we notice we haven't spoken at all about Optimus here. Like,
Yeah.
I think the upside from that is obviously even a lot larger, but it's just less immediate. So, um, yeah, I think it's such an exciting time. I mean, this has been you and I have been in this stock for a very long time now. We've been looking forward to this particular moment in time for a very long time when the stock is or when the it becomes clear to the general public that Tesla actually has solved autonomy. And it's so obvious now. Like if anyone is doubting whether as Tesla has done it, like I even saw Ross Gerber today. He's like, "Oh, it doesn't work in the sun," and his like windshield. Did you see this post?
No, I did not.
Oh, it was hilarious. Like he's like, "Oh, it doesn't work in the sun," but like his windshield was like completely covered in some sort of like grease or like film or something like that. And
Hmm.
I forget who it was. It might have been James Stevenson, but it said something like, "Well, your windshield is disgusting. Why is it covered in that all your hair gel or something like that?" So
Whoa.
it's just like, but like you have to, I think, be kind of deliberately manipulating, you know, um the narrative to be saying that Tesla's FSD approach isn't working. I mean, like I'm literally driving it on actual sheets of ice across turns, and it's doing so better than I would. And
Mm.
I've been a winter driver my whole life. I know like very well how to handle those types of situations, and I'm like, yeah, it's doing it better than I would. Um, and that was a situation I thought was going to take a very long time for them to get figured out, and they've just nailed it. And we're literally like two months away from this huge new 10x parameter increase model that I'm sure is going to be even better. So
You promised 2 months.
what did Elon say? End of February, I think. So let's call
Oh.
it. I think Tesla's actually been hitting their timelines recently.
Mm.
I think it goes back to when Elon initially said they'd launched the robotaxi in April, I think it was, and that was like 9 months in advance, and that's like exactly when they hit it. And um, you know, they seem to actually have data to support these timelines now, and it seems to be very accurate at assessing safety risk and miles per intervention and all that sort of stuff. So I to me it seems very real, and it's like 2 months is not a very long time away.
Yeah. This weekend was huge. We did have really bad weather last week as well, but this weekend there was a ton of snow, ranging from like the upper Midwest, down, huge bands of snow, and the Teslas did really well in the snow and ice, from what I could see. A lot of good stories that I heard about on X, as far as the performance in snow and ice. 2 years ago, the cars still made no adjustment for uh, snow or ice, and just last year they started to adjust for it, and it would lose traction and freak out. Now it's um, handling the slip and slide very easily, and not freaking out when the car slips. I did have some issues on my side where my camera was either totally covered with snow, or it was just too dirty and I needed to wipe it off or whatever. But like those were user errors, and I'm guessing for Ross and his windshield, that's user error. I think a lot of the window needs to get cleaned up there in the middle, like right in front of the camera, and it's hard to clean that. So you got to remove like the camera enclosure and get in there. You can set an appointment with Tesla to clean that, but like it can get cloudy in there, and
Mm-hmm.
um, Tesla doesn't like that when it's driving.
Yeah, I mean, so that's true, and like should kind of like monitor your cameras and everything like that. But like I'll just say my Tesla right now is absolutely covered in dirt and salt, and like I had this one error the other day that said like FSD may be degraded because the this one of the cameras was down. But I was like, all right, let's just see. I'll monitor it. I'll make sure we're doing it safely. But I couldn't tell a difference between how it was driving, with this occluded camera, and
Mm.
the normal. So of course you can have situations where there's moisture inside and you need an appointment. But I've been actually like very shocked at just how well it's been driving with literally zero care. Like I have not this entire winter season even wiped off one of the cameras. And my car is a total mess, and it's been performing perfectly. So I've been very
So
impressed.
speaking of cameras, what about lidar here? uh, yeah, Rivian had their event, and they unveiled their plans for self driving. Brought a bunch of influencers over and unveiled a system that seemed to be kind of where Tesla was like 3 years ago with their autonomy. Frequent interventions, um, not like safety critical, but like kind of wanting to be too close to the other cars, like um, uncomfortably, very uncomfortably close, and frequently having to do those things. And They have this thing called like cooperative steering. Kyle
Oh,
at
wow, that sounds very positive. It's like a Darwin, like a Orwellian phrase.
yeah, Kyle at out of spec, during his ride, they were talking about it. So it's where you can do stuff with the wheel and it doesn't disengage. So you disengage by, I think, tapping the brakes or hitting a button. So you can like steer it and it doesn't automatically disengage, which I think is actually good for safety, provided you're
Hmm.
steering the right way, because then like as soon as you let go, it's gonna resume and your car doesn't just like stop and then maybe you get rear-ended or something.
Yeah.
But they unveiled a system that seemed a bit backward because we're all in our Teslas. Everyone on hardware 4, including Cybertruck, is experiencing this amazing version of FSD 14.2, and we got our Christmas update that's even better. And we're all seeing how good it is. And now Rivian seems to be taking a huge step backward. They're not embracing vision only. They're doing LiDAR. They do need
And,
data
and radar.
and radar. So what's
Like,
funny is the LiDAR is front facing, and people say, oh, you need LiDAR in fog and rain and at night when it's dark out. But uh, when it's dark out at night, what do you have, Matt?
when it headlights.
You have headlights. Like,
Yeah.
you don't turn off the headlights to drive autonomously. Like, people act like, oh, it's hard in conditions where it's hard to see at night. Like, that's what headlights are for.
Yeah.
And then in fog and rain, the camera can see better than the human eye. We're affected by glare. We don't think of it as glare because it's not like a light shining in our eyes, but fog and rain cause glare. So if you ever, next time you're in your car and there's heavy fog or rain, take a video and then like compare the video to what your eye is seeing, and you'll see that your iPhone camera or your Droid or whatever, it sees much further than you do.
Hmm.
So like LiDAR isn't needed. Um, so I think they're
Like,
all shocked by this.
I mean, there was a case to be made that lidar was needed a while ago, but like, I mean, honestly, has RJ tried one of the Teslas now that's using vision only? I mean, it seems indisputable to me that you can do vision only. I mean, right now, FSD is outstanding and probably safer than a human. And I would say in most scenarios is a better driver than a human, and it's only going to get better from here. So if you already have that information, why would you be going all in on this radar plus lidar approach? It seems so reckless to me. Um, it was it was like sad watching this event, honestly. And he's like, and imagine a future where you can have point to point. You type in your address and the car takes you there point to point the whole way. You don't need to intervene. And he's like, that's what we're aiming for next year. Okay. Or you can buy a Tesla for like half the price of some of your cars and get that same functionality um, today. And it's just so yeah. I don't know. I mean, the market's going to sort this out. But like, I'm just sad that Rivian. I actually really do want Rivian to succeed. So I wish they would be making the smart plays to do so. Like, well, they're in a bit of a hard spot financially. So why not just license it from Tesla? Like, why would you literally hire an entire autonomy team? You're not going to get the A-listers, as a little Rivian on your AI team. Like, I don't want to degrade the people that are there, but like AI talent is very hard to come by. Not to mention the compute and everything else that you need. So why would you try to build this all in house? It just seems kind of absurd, when you can literally just license it. So I don't know. I'm hoping we get some sort of licensing announcement at some point, but it may take a little while longer.
So enough about Tesla. I know Tesla was up 3% today, but Farzad, he sold his Tesla. He bought some Lemonade stock. Lemonade was up 8.38% today. What do you think
Ooh.
about all this, Matt? Farzad
Yeah,
sipping some lemonade.
Farzad caught a lot of flack for that. I think you and I are somewhat immune to that now because we've been talking about lemonade for such a long time. People just kind of know that we're gonna do that from time to time. But I was reading a lot of the comments uh, to Farzad's post on that, and I would say most of them were extremely negative. People saying things like, "Oh yeah, you sell your Tesla right before Tesla launches on autonomy. Like, good idea, idiot. Like to buy a money losing insurance company." So there was a lot of this, these arguments of just like, this is dumb. And I engaged in a DM group. I won't go into the details or identify identities or anything like that, but a lot of the comments I was seeing just across the board were like they sounded exactly like Tesla Q circa 2019. So they were saying things like, "Oh, like Lemonade loses money. Like, look how much money they've lost in the last 8 quarters or whatever. Look at their like whatever all these like backward looking his financial metrics." And I'm like, guys, that is exactly what Tesla Q was saying about Tesla in 2019, right before it revalued 8x.
Mhm.
So it's like you have to be forward looking, and the right way to approach the conversation of Lemonade or any company, I think, is what does the future look like? And you and I have talked about this in great details. I won't rehash the entire kind of thesis here, but it's actually once you do the work to understand the business, it's actually like very straightforward to kind of model out their unit economics and how those kind of compound over time, and with the operating leverage they have, what their future earnings look like. And it's an extremely compelling story, I think. So I just think there's some more education needed on the Tesla investor community or just the general investing public around the Lemonade story. So I'm excited that Farzad is going to be doing a little bit more Lemonade content in the future to kind of share his thoughts.
Yeah, so if you search our channel, so Rebellion Air, and search Lemonade, you can see some of our content on Lemonade. Yeah, it feels very similar to Tesla pre 2019. Maybe closer to 2020. So like Lemonade has 4x from where it was. So we
That's
got
very
that in
point. Mhm.
January of 2020. But yeah, yeah, there have been a number of people that have sold their lemonade to buy in other stocks, and it reminds me of a conversation that I would have with people where people would say, "Well, Tesla 4x." This is in January of 2020, and they would ask me, "What's the next 4x?" And I said,
So Bradford, what is the next 4x in January of 2020?
"Tesla is the next 4x." And it is more than 8x from their I think at least 6x. I think it's 8x. Um, so like yeah, I was correct in that, but it's going from a place where they're not profitable to one where they are, and it doesn't look like the incumbents. So you have in 2019, you had all these automobile analysts looking at Tesla, and they didn't know
Mhm.
how to look at it. Um, and it's similar with Lemonade. Uh,
I think it's eerily similar, actually. I mean, we were talking to a lot of people at the investor day, about this, and a lot of them were still talking about like price to book ratio and all these metrics, that the analysts use to look at the legacy insurance companies. Lemonade, at its heart, is just a completely different animal. Um, they've been investing from the beginning to take massive like market share. So they're built for scale like from day one. They've really built all the infrastructure they need to scale up significantly. Of course, they've got more work to do, and they're going to continue to get better. And they've got this kind of culture of continuous improvement and moving extremely fast. I think that's going to be their kind of moat in the long run. Is just the pace of innovation, which is what Elon always says is the best moat, anyways. Um, but like they're a very small player in the space. I mean, the larger companies in this space are all in the, you know, 50 to 150 billion dollar market cap kind of range.
mhm.
Lemonade right now is a bit over 6 billion. And so you might say like, okay, well, maybe they can get a bit of market share and get to the size of those incumbents. But I think if you actually understand what they're doing, I would say the opportunity we're talking very long term now is actually even bigger than that, because they want to not only get a bunch of share, but to deliver better unit economics to their customers. They want to have they should have better margins on top of that, because their operating leverage is so extreme. They're doing so much with AI, so they don't have to have a lot of the back end kind of processes and overhead and payroll to support a lot of the things that they do, day in and day out.
Yeah.
So, if
They're
you,
taking the driver out of the insurance. So like you're not paying the agent to sell the policy. So they do that 100% digitally. They don't use a person for that. Also, when people submit claims, they're not a lot of it is automated. Uh, they they are fair. I believe they're fair with their approval for claims.
Mhm.
So they're not like United Health where they're using automation to deny 95% of claims. That's not what Lemonade's doing with automation. So what that does is it reduces your cost, and it grows your profit. So right now they're working in very small markets, which is pet and renters, but they're growing into car insurance.
Yeah,
And then over time they'll add back to home insurance. And they're also growing very quickly in Europe. Europe doesn't have as onerous of regulations as they do in the U.S.
yeah,
with yes different rules state by state. Essentially, is how it works in the U.S.
yeah. Yeah, so like, I think the proxy kind of coming back to Tesla was people were saying like, okay, Tesla shouldn't have a market cap higher than the other, auto OEMs, let alone higher than all the other auto OEMs put together. But
Mhm.
here we are with Tesla at how many multiples of the other market caps, combined is Tesla now? It's at
Uh-huh.
1.6 trillion. But it's not without reason. The market is not being irrational here. They're saying, okay, you've created an entirely new market. You're doing stuff on the energy side. You're doing stuff with AI that is going to lead to massive amounts of new cash flows. We were talking about at the top of the hour,
Mhm.
and I think Lemonade in the very long arc is going to be very similar. Like their market cap potential, I think, has the potential at least to go higher than the other companies combined, just because they should be able to have a better product for cheaper. And even if they fall somewhat short of that goal, we think more in the near term, they're going to continue to accelerate their revenue growth, reach that point of profitability. And when we model this all out from first principles, as we've done in great detail, like the numbers get kind of nutty. Like looking out into 28, 29, there are some years where the earnings per share in our model increases by almost 300%. So yeah, they're
Mhm.
not profitable today, but they're going to get profitable. I think it's very low risk statement to say that they're going to be profitable in, let's say, 2027. Um, but if your revenue is growing like this and your operating expenses are like this, then once you hit that point of profitability, for the most part, like follows the curve of your revenue growth.
Mhm.
So, the numbers really do get insane with how quickly Lemonade's earnings per share growth would look towards the end of this decade. And I think a lot of people who haven't done the work on it, it's very easy to take a cursory glance at the company's financials and say like, oh yeah, this is like another crap company that's still down significantly from when they IPO'd in the middle of like the SPAC craziness. And so like it's not worth my time. Let's just focus on Tesla. And we love Tesla. There's like nothing to do with denigrating Tesla. We're invested in both. But I think people are still in the stage of kind of coming up to speed on exactly the advantages that Lemonade has. And so I'm excited for Farzad to be a voice kind of sharing some of that.
So we've been putting out some content recently about Teslanaires and Lemonaires and what it's like to go through that journey, but also solving the money problem around um, just beating that money beast. And then what do you do with your time and energy after that? It could be kind of strange. uh, I think now we could talk about Elon's wealth, the
Yeah.
valuation
Oh,
on
I do
SpaceX.
want to
Go ahead.
hit pause on that for a second, because I thought it was like such a good video that you put out. So I'd encourage people, if you have kind of made life-changing wealth recently, I'd encourage you to check out that what is it called, Bradford, so they can click on the right one.
Well, Jordan will pull that up for us. I'm not sure
Okay.
the exact title, but
Yeah, but
it's about like solving the money problem with your wealth from either Tesla or Lemonade, because there's a chunk of people in the Lemonade community which is about to hit 5,000 on X, uh, and um, in that community, people are talking about becoming millionaires from that. And when you solve the money problem, many Teslaonaires have, life
Mhm.
can get weird because a lot of our lives, we do have like our relationships, we have marriages, kids, all that, but a lot of life is around like having enough money so that you can get ahead. Um, about getting rich, the weird reality no one tells you about getting rich on Tesla, rebellionaire. So you could search for weird reality rebellionaire, and it you'll find it here on YouTube. If you're on X right now, you need to go to YouTube to find that. Um, yeah,
yeah,
so
I'll just
check that
say
out.
it really resonated with me because I think like you're the TLDR on it is like you come up like young, scrappy, hungry, to if I can steal that Hamilton line, and like you want to like slay the wealth dragon, and then like you finally get there, and it's like, all right, well, like that doesn't actually satisfy you as a human being, and
What
like
do I
what
do
is
next?
next? And if I can like leave work, well, how much of your identity was wrapped up in work, and so how do you find meaning kind of moving forward? So I think that's something that whether you've reached those wealth milestones or you are planning to, if you're still in the young, scrappy, and hungry kind of making your way up in this world, I'd encourage people to watch that video because it's I think it's helpful in kind of help understanding the challenges that come with kind of navigating that new reality. But yeah, let's talk about Elon's challenges. He has never hit pause or wanted to retire. Cern Basher put out a pretty great table, which we'll show here in a second. But there's all this talk right now about Elon becoming the first trillionaire and how we shouldn't have trillionaires, and how it's like all the wealth that Elon could be doing better things with. Um,
Mhm.
like
Like
I
it's sitting in a bank somewhere.
sitting in a
Like
bank
there's so
somewhere,
many bad faith arguments. So like people act like this money is just like sitting in the bank, and or it's like sitting on some air mattress, and Elon's just like swimming in it and not doing anything with it and just letting it sit
hoarding
there.
it and twirling his mustache and saying, all you poor people can't have it because it's mine. I feel like that there's this cartoonish depiction of him. Like meanwhile, those of us who actually understand what he's doing understand that he's actually building wealth for other people and building things. The reason he has wealth to begin with is because he's doing things that are economically useful, for NASA, for private individuals, for tons of other companies. And so like it's just cracking me up that he's getting all this trash for becoming the world's first trillionaire. Meanwhile, he's not actually the trillionaire. So like if you want his money so much, how about you invest alongside him? If you're so confident that he'll be the world's first trillionaire, just put a little bet in Tesla. See if
So you
if
can copy his homework.
exactly. But CERN had this great chart, which was pretty eye opening to me actually. We'll just focus on the top part for now, but this is basically showing Elon's net worth right now at 692 billion. I guess these numbers have to go up a little bit higher given Tesla's move recently. But essentially, what surprised me about this is that his SpaceX holdings at this $800 billion valuation that you can see kind of in the top left-ish there. That's actually worth 336 billion to Elon compared to only 197 for his Tesla holdings. So his SpaceX is now worth meaningfully more than his Tesla shares, which was kind of surprising. And the thing that was even more surprising than that to me was that his XAI holdings, he owns 59% of that company, are worth 140 billion, so almost as much as Tesla. So just kind of wild how much value he has created with all these companies. And people like Tesla, I think, is the public facing one. People are always talking about his ownership percentage of Tesla. But these other pockets of wealth are much more than pockets. They're becoming increasingly meaningful amounts of his overall picture.
Those are some big pockets, and I also know there's some Teslaonaires who maybe they put like 5 or 10% of their money in SpaceX, and now that's gone up by 15x compared to where it was in 2021. Like that's now that could be over half of their money, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, yeah. I'm certainly regretting passing on that opportunity. It's like I don't really want to lock it up, and I think Tesla's a good investment, so I passed. And yeah, that was not a good move on my part. Um, but yeah, the other thing that's kind of wild about this is the second largest private company in the world. Elon also founded OpenAI, and that's not on this table. So, like, imagine if he had kind of remained invested in that,
Dang.
just how much better he'd be doing. So it's just, like it's actually completely crazy that he started all these multi-hundred-billion-dollar companies, or in Tesla's case, over a trillion. Um, so that yeah, this guy's created a huge amount of value, and he's getting all sorts of crap for not solving all of the world's problems with his wealth. But the reason he has wealth to begin with is because he is solving all these extremely hard problems.
Elon, one of my recent tweets, he retweeted, and this was a few weeks ago, where I think Warren Redlick pointed this out, where worldwide, world governments spend $40 trillion per year plus in
Hmm.
government spending, and they haven't solved world hunger.
Hmm.
So, like, people talk about, radicals talk about confiscating Elon's wealth, because, like, it's somehow a bad thing. But governments are spending a 40x of his wealth, which would be gone if you just confiscated it. It'd be gone.
Yeah.
It wouldn't even get us 1 month of world government spending, and world hunger wouldn't be solved. Like, you can't just like throw money at problems. It doesn't work that way. You have to learn through problems, and I think Elon has showed us that. Like, you need smart people to work with. Elon's really good at building teams,
Hmm.
um, but he's also very good at enabling his teams and freeing them up, being that hammer that's needed at the perfect time to break through whatever is the roadblock. Um, so you can't just throw money at it. And Volkswagen learned this with their Cariad software problem. Uh, I
Hmm.
don't even know where their software is today, but I think they tried to spend like 30 billion on their software, and like it's still not solved. So you can't just throw money at problems. It doesn't work that way. It takes time, takes engineering, takes smarts, and um, it takes someone like taking a taking a stand, um, and standing out. You think about greats like Andrew Carnegie. We have all these libraries now because of Andrew Carnegie and his steel empire. A Hershey. There's this Hershey school from Milton Hershey. It's 2,200 students. It's all full tuition every year. These are kids from poor households, and like everything's covered by it. And the impact to society from these great titans is it's not well understood or appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I do think we're gonna see some more continued attacks on along this kind of vector. I do think just as AI kind of proliferates, um, I don't see how we don't have the scenario where its stock market returns, kind of get amplified, and so therefore people who have more wealth right now get even more wealth, and those at the bottom, well, they are in absolute terms significantly better off. If AI really proliferates and we get lower cost goods and services and better quality goods and services, still the effect of that I think would be an increase in the wealth gap and in income inequality and all those things. And I think that is destabilizing for society. So I do worry that this problem is actually only going to be aggravated, even though I think if you could if you had to choose any time in human history to live in terms of quality of life, everyone would pick right now, even if you happen to be in the bottom 50% or the bottom 10% even, of the kind of society. Still, absolutely better off, or still better off in absolute terms than any other period in human history. So, but that doesn't that's not a popular point to make in political rallies, and I think the pressure is always going to be, well, we need to take more from the rich and give more to the wealthy. So I think this is a problem that is only going to get exaggerated going forward,
Yeah.
and I think it's a key thing that our society needs to start thinking about.
What happened to championing the American dream and championing success? I realized this a few years ago, and I think this was early on in the Tesla story. I was at Disney, and when you're at Disney and they have the Super Bowl, I was there like right after the Super Bowl happened, and I think like Wes Welker or Danny Amendola or something was the MVP of the Super Bowl. So like right after the Super Bowl, he says, "I'm going to Disney World," and then they actually go to Disney World the next day. And what was cool about it was Tom Brady attended with him, and it got me thinking about how we all hate on Tom Brady. I know you're Michigan, so you like Tom Brady, right? Even though
I'm
you're a
Michigan
Lions
State,
fan.
actually. Nah, Michigan
Oh,
State.
oh,
I,
so you hate him? Okay, all
I,
right.
I actually don't. I don't know.
So,
He's a
so
good
be that way.
commentator.
So be that way. So like we want to hate on Tom Brady. He has a supermodel wife, or he did. He had all the success. He had all these Super Bowls. Like I realize as a Colts fan, but as like more as an American, why are we hating on these successful people?
Hmm.
We should be admiring their success and like feel good for their success, not be jealous of it.
Hmm.
And I think that's how we're treating Elon as similar.
Yeah, it's also soul crushing for you if you're the envious one, if you're wanting what he has or wanting him to fail because his life is better than yours. Like that is just poison for you as a human being. So yeah, maybe some parts of it are unfair, but just dwelling on that is just not healthy at all. So yeah, this is like I agree with your point. Like we used to celebrate the American dream, and I think we've lost a little bit of that now. Like it's not perfect, but it's like it's by far the best system that humanity has ever come up with in capitalism, in terms of how to structure a society economically. So, but I think one of the kind of flaws is, as you're going to get significant income inequality, and that can lead to some destabilization. So,
I know we're going long, but let's stay here for a second. Let's pretend SpaceX didn't happen, that they're not landing rockets.
oh, ULA. So ULA is still like gold standard.
So like, Boeing Starliners like getting lost in space, like stranding astronauts, like
What
so
would have
like
happened to those astronauts?
yeah, so basically, Russia and China would be handling all of space for us. Like, do we want that? I think people don't understand like what's going on with SpaceX and how much activity they're launching into space. Like 85% plus of our mass to orbit is because of SpaceX. Um, People don't understand this, but you take that away and like we would have it'd be very minimal and very weak and expensive. Um, if you take away Tesla, you'd have no profitable EV maker in the US. And I think almost globally, the Chinese EV makers, they're making their money off of hybrids. Maybe Xiaomi is finally reach a scale where they're profitably be making EVs, but you wouldn't have profitable EV makers. So you wouldn't have all those jobs. So 140 plus thousand jobs at Tesla. You take away all of Elon's wealth or contribution, you don't have all those jobs, and then all the people that serve them. So there's a 3x multiplier. So 420,000 jobs in excess of what was
Nice.
is created at Tesla. So he's Matt Smith. I'm Bradford Ferguson. We've been on a tear today. Excited for what Tesla stock's doing. Lemonade, not too bad either. And you could check us out on Rebellionaire. You can check us out for search for Weird and Rebellionaire, and also Lemonade and Rebellionaire to see some of our content there. And with that, I'm going to say for now.
Bye for now.